Tonight's program is on the Battle of Sui Tre, a short but vicious battle on the 21st of March, 1967. It was in this battle that then Lieutenant Colonel Jack Vessey, serving as a substitute artillery battalion commander and who had only days before arrived at the unit, earned his Distinguished Service Cross, the nation's second highest award for valor. Our first speaker tonight is Major General Rick Nash, former Minnesota National Guard 1st Brigade in the Balkans commander, former 34th Infantry Division commander in Iraq, and former Minnesota Adjutant General. General Vessey was a friend and mentor to General Nash. General Nash will speak on General Vessey's leadership. He'll be followed by Chaplain John Morris. Chaplain Morris has a distinguished career in the Army and did important work with veterans returning from combat. He's currently an instructor at the General Colin Powell Leadership Academy in South Minneapolis, and he's currently writing a book on General Vessey. He just came back from Washington, D.C., where he interviewed Ed Meese from President Reagan's cabinet. And he'll give an overview of the battle, discussing, I think, at least 3 various versions, official versions of the battle. After Chaplain Morris's battle overview, we will hear from a number of Minnesota Army veterans who participated in the battle. So to start tonight's program, please welcome Major General Rick Nash.
As Dave said, everyone brings a book, so this isn't my book, but we're going to talk a little bit about that later on. So thank you, Doug, and thanks for your military service, your Vietnam service, and facilitating tonight's discussion. One correction for Dave when he talked about the Minnesota Military Museum. It's in Camp Ripley, at Camp Ripley, just north of Little Falls. So if you go to St. Cloud, you won't find it, so just a correction. As Doug mentioned, I certainly knew General Vessey very well. And I'll talk about this in just a little bit when I get to the portion about Dr. Saylor, professor here at Concordia. And so I'll take just a few minutes to cover some of the areas of General Vessey, Minnesota born and raised, and who went then to become the 10th chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff under President Ronald Reagan. And so we'll talk a little bit more specifically about General Vessey, and I know Chaplain Colonel Morris will do the same as he's done the research more into his biography that he's writing on General Vessey, and more details then on the general, his actions at the fire base during the Battle of Sui Tre. So what Doug didn't say is I was drafted back in 1972, and I was at Fort Polk, Louisiana on January 1st, 1973 when the draft ended. So I was stuck by 6 months into military service. So before I begin though, I want to also welcome back all of our Vietnam veterans that are here tonight. So welcome home. And thanks for your service. Also, a special thanks to Randall Dietrich, the executive director of our Minnesota Military Museum at Camp Ripley, whose initiative and support for the museum has established this very timely and important roundtable program, and a success that has been, along with the partnership of TPT, who are doing all the recordings for the past year. Thanks also to Dr. Saylor. Is Dr. Saylor here tonight? He's sitting in the back as usual, so I'm going to do the plug for your book later on, Dr. Saylor, but and also a special thanks to Concordia University for their support for this inaugural year of hosting us here at the university. And for Dr. Saylor's 2.5 years of collecting the oral history of General Vessey, who published and then through the resources of the Minnesota National Guard was able to print 800 copies of this 750+ page book of oral history of General Vessey and his wife Avis. So if you want to know any more about General Vessey after tonight's program, you can certainly find it within Dr. Saylor's great work. Also, a special thanks to Al Zadorn, who is sitting here with the hat on in the second row. Raise your hand, Al, if you don't know Al. But he does an excellent job also of covering the World War II roundtables and the Vietnam roundtables and writing about the speakers at the programs, and just does a phenomenal job. And I also want to thank our panel tonight, who are sitting over here to my right, for their service and the stories that you'll hear from each of them later on this evening. And I and Doug have come to know that group over the last year, as they are incredible Minnesotans, patriots, and soldiers. So thanks all of you for your attendance tonight, for being here. Also a special guest we have, Sam, please stand up. This is General Vessey's grandson, Sam. His mother, Evan, his brother, was going to be here tonight, but he bailed for some reason. But the group that's going to speak tonight have met Sarah, General Vessey's daughter, in the past, and she's unable to be here tonight. She's in Santa Fe with some medical issues, so she had certainly looked forward to being here to see you again. Also, thanks to Colonel Chaplain Morris for the work that he's now doing on writing General Vessey's biography, and it's a passion of love for Chaplain Morris, who served with me as our division chaplain in Iraq. So now a little bit about the general, and it's all from my perspective, and who I think is Minnesota's own national treasure. So back in 1997, he promoted and pinned me to colonel, and I have been honored to have him as a mentor, a teacher, and a friend ever since. We would meet regularly, either here in cities or up at his cabin in Garrison throughout the year, and discuss a broad range of matters. And he was always extremely well-versed on local, national, and international events, and had a well-thought-out and generally strategic, yet simplistic approach to resolve very complex and perplexing matters, whether it was economics or politics, military situations, diplomacy, or intelligence. And I sought out his insight, his guidance, his experience and leadership qualities before I deployed as a commander of the 34th Red Bull Infantry Division to Iraq on issues that I would probably encounter commanding a force of over 16,000 service members. Just for your information, this was the first time that the 34th Red Bull Division had deployed since World War II. And it was the time when, back then is when General Vessey went to Camp Claiborne, Louisiana, back on February 10th, 1941, and then to England, North Africa, and on to Italy. A character strength that I found very intriguing was his unshakable integrity, along with his wisdom that combined his vision and common sense. President Reagan, at the time of General Vessey's retirement on September 30th of 1985, said, and I quote, "General Vessey will be remembered as a man of patriotism and deep religious belief, an officer who brought character and credit to every billet he ever held. Jack Vessey never forgot what it was like to be an enlisted man, to be just a GI. That pretty much defined the man, the soldier, the general that we all knew. As you might expect, General Vessey had a remarkable career. After knowing him for many years and then reading the oral history and the great work of Dr. Saylor, one begins to understand the essence of the man, the soldier, the husband, and the personal faith that chartered and guided his life and his decisions. He was gentle, kind, selfless, and a considerate man of conviction. a devoted person who was willing to sacrifice, share, and contribute to improve and service our nation, our military and soldiers he loved until the day he passed. I was always inspired by how he took responsibility regardless of his rank for his subordinates' actions, how he was challenged and overcame obstacles, placing duty above comfort and personal gain, and how he espoused the premise that there is no sacrifice too great on behalf of our men and women in uniform. My comments about General Vessey only touch the wave tops of the man that we'll hear further expanded on tonight by the panel, by Doug and by Chaplain Morris. On those fateful days of March 19th to the 21st of 1967, involving those here tonight and then Lieutenant Colonel Jack Vessey. I've heard his descriptions of those events that changed his life, and we will hear then tonight from those men who were youth at that important time in their lives and the impact that that battle had on for the rest of their lives. Thank you and enjoy the program.